Is Misty deserving of being promoted to principal dancer? Will she only be promoted because she's Black? Does she really have the body? Does she have the technique? I physically shut down and couldn't perform. Don't let other people's words define you. There's so much power in being yourself.
If there was a word that you understand the most, what is that word?
Fight.
Misty, this is such an honor to have this conversation with you. And we're here in New York City. There's the city is alive, and you've been here for a long time, making a difference in the world of artistry and creativity, using ballet as your medium. And I can't wait to better understand how you work from the inside out.
Thank you. I'm excited.
So it's an honor to sit and have this conversation with you.
Thank you. It's a long time coming. It's an honor to sit here with you as well.
Thank you for the blurb that you gave on the first rule of mastery for the book. And it was so special to feel your words, and the contribution you made is meaningful. Let's start at the beginning. Before the age of 13, can you explain what it was like growing up and what it was like in your home? Let's start there.
Yeah. So I'm the fourth child from my parents. I was born in Kansas City, Missouri. I don't remember much. We left Kansas when I was just 2 years old, but I know that my father played basketball. He was very athletic. My mom was super athletic and into sports. She was a professional cheerleader for the Kansas City Chiefs. So it was like a crazy sports family household. So my mom ended up divorcing my father, and she took me and my siblings to Los Angeles. So I was just 2 years old. So from that moment, that was how my life would be. It would be picking up, moving, instability, not really having a stable home. I would say probably until the age of maybe 8 was the first time we lived in a house. So my mother would marry 2 more times and add 2 more children into the family. So I'm a middle child, and I'm already naturally introverted. And so the circumstances I grew up in definitely shaped me even more. I could easily hide between my siblings who were all very loud and want to be the center of attention. I was the opposite. It's like I just wanted to just exist. And I was just in survival mode and didn't want to be seen or heard. And music became this kind of saving grace for me. Music almost, I would sit, I remember, with cassette tapes and you pull out the jacket or whatever and you could read the lyrics.
I remember
that.
Of course I remember, yes.
So that, connecting with lyrics, it kind of became my voice in a way.
What was the style of music?
R&B and soul. And it was at 7, 8, turning 8, I think, that Mariah Carey's debut album came out. And it was the first time I felt the importance of representation and the importance of being able to see yourself through someone else. And, she was biracial and successful and talented. And her music made me want to create movement. And it was the very first time that I really had that urge. So I started choreographing at that age. And it was also, at that time, it was the first time that we were living in a house. It was when we moved to San Pedro, which is what I considered my home, where I eventually would, grow up there and go to middle school and high school there. But it was the first time I felt this sense of stability internally.
Okay, so 0 to 7, there was a lot of change. There was instability. And the instability was the family structure. Mm-hmm. And then marked by, you finally had a place that you could call home. Okay. And it was right around that same time that you found a music that you could identify with and a person that you could identify with. And you purposely used the word now, representation. And at that time, what did it mean and feel like to you when you saw somebody that was inspiring and that you could identify with?
I literally felt like I was looking in a mirror. I felt seen. I felt inspired. and that I could see this like flicker of hope for a future that was beyond my circumstances.
Looking back now, what was the impact that early childhood experiences had on you? The instability and maybe the not being seen up into age 7 or 8. How did that impact this tremendous ability that you have to be able to express your body in a world-class way to some of the most beautiful music on the planet?
It had a huge impact. I mean, I think that I so easily fit in and transitioned into the ballet culture and world because I felt most at home, most comfortable, most in control when I was expressing myself through movement. It was a terrifying thing to think about using my voice or even connecting with what was happening inside of me to be able to understand how to verbalize it. But it became so natural to me just to be able to express that through movement. It was what I would do. You know, there was a lot of abuse in my household. My mother married many times, and movement became this escape for me. Wherever it was we were living, I would find a space and I would kind of just go into this other world.
Beethoven talks about his raptus, and it was a place that he would go to, and it was an internal place, this creative genius place that he would go to listen for the music. And a raptus is this idea that like I'm just in rapture, I'm completely consumed with an activity. Is that something that you recognize as well?
100%.
What is that like for you?
It's everything around me just goes away. All of the worries, all of the concerns. Like, you know, when people often, I guess it's a stereotype or maybe it's a lot of people's experience, but when they go into a ballet setting, you feel tense. And there's so much, you know, it's this discipline and expectation of, you know, perfecting. And it was the opposite for me. It was like everything released in my body. And I felt this, you know, I don't know, abandonment, I guess, to the art form. It was the first time in my life that I felt safe in an environment where I could completely let go and create. And that's how I've always felt, whether it was in the studio or on a stage. It seems so counterintuitive to, you know, someone who's so shy and doesn't want to be in the spotlight to then end up in a performing career where I'm dancing for thousands of people. But it's always been this safe space where I could be myself and express myself in a way that worked for me. And, you know, no one could touch me. I was just up there on my own, and the audience had to just, you know, take it or leave it.
Wow. Okay. There's so much here. Let me start with the idea that nobody could touch me. Is that a physical thing you're talking about, or is that emotional?
I think it's both.
It is both.
Yeah.
And was that born out of, like, was that freedom born out of a fear of violence and or emotional abuse? Or am I making that to be too dramatic?
It's definitely both of those things. You know, just being able to feel this, I'm going to say it again and again, but this sense of control. And I feel like I never had that my entire childhood, whether it was, you know, were we going to have food on the table, where we were going to live, were we going to have a roof over our heads, whose home we were going to be in that I didn't know, what man was going to come into our lives that my mother would bring, in the physical, the emotional abuse, all of those things. And there was a sense of control, and that I was an individual. I wasn't sharing anything with my 5 siblings. It was all mine, and it was all me that I was, you know, creating.
Amazing. So when you, and we're specifically talking about ballet at this moment. Okay. So you were not exposed to ballet until the age of 13. Okay. When you first were exposed to ballet, you had this experience where it's like, wait, I can be at home doing this. Most common stereotype of ballet and ballet teachers is that it's pretty tough. It's pretty rough for these pretty girls in little boxes, as the famous book quote. And so you didn't have that. You had something different. You felt safe and at home, and you felt seen. What were you seen for?
I think I was seen for a talent that I didn't know that I had. I never felt like I had someone who believed in me and believed that I could be, again, something more than my circumstances. And it wasn't until I met, the drill team coach, because I auditioned for drill team when I was like 12 and a half. And that's where I was introduced to ballet. And then at 13, my first ballet teacher, Cynthia Bradley, it was the first time that I felt like someone believed in me and someone saw something more for me. And I think that gave me even more confidence to dive in deeper into this thing I was already interested in.
Do you remember that first moment when you were seen, maybe for one of the first times, or at least the first significant time that you remember?
So vividly. All of the times I remember. I remember auditioning for the drill team. I remember when I decided I wanted to do it, and I told my mom and my sister, and they were like, "What are you talking about? Like, why would you think you could do this? You're so introverted." And I was like, I just know I can. But I'm not going to just audition for the drill team. I'm going to audition for the position of captain.
Wait. Okay, this is so good. Okay. Pause that question I just asked and let's go right into this. I knew I could. The elders said, "What are you thinking?" I think this is you still. So that 12-year-old that said, "No, I have an idea. There's something I want to explore, to try out, to do." The world, the elders at that point said, you're off your rocker. Mm-hmm. This is not going to be a fit. What makes you think that you could do something like that?
Right.
Before that, you had that moment of confrontation with your mom. What gave you this inner ability to say, that is something I'm going to do? It could be innocence. It could be like, I want to leave it completely open, but what was that like? Because imagine if the world could have that. So maybe we can just open it up and hear how you worked from that place.
You know, everyone communicates in a different way, and I feel like I was so underdeveloped as a young girl when it came to my verbal skills and social skills. But there was just something that clicked in me when I heard music, and when my body was moving. I felt intelligent. I felt beautiful. I felt strong. I felt confident. So it was so innate. At that point, I didn't even need someone to tell me that I was all of those things. I just felt it. And I couldn't help but try to do something with it.
Was there some sort of sport before? Or
No.
Was it like you were...
Zero, nothing.
There's nothing.
I did nothing.
So then help me bridge this idea that I felt something. You're talking about physical intelligence, which is a real form of intelligence. We talk about emotional intelligence, physical intelligence, or actually general intelligence, musical intelligence. But what you're talking about is physical intelligence. I know how to connect, and I feel strong and powerful in this way. Okay. So what were the activities that you were doing if there was a nothing for you to have that awakening?
I don't even know. I was at recess. I would go on the monkey bars. I was really drawn to gymnastics when the Olympics would happen. And I remember specifically drawn to the floor exercises, because in my mind now it's the closest thing that I'd ever seen to classical dance and that kind of lyrical movement. And I would go and try and mimic and imitate these, I taught myself to do back bend walkovers and handstands and splits. But there was just something I was connected to with it. But outside of me just teaching myself these things, there was nothing. I wasn't a part of any sports or anything like that.
And then you had a first coach that must have done something to elicit. And you said, I felt seen.
Amazing.
So first you had that feeling. There was a connection there. And then secondly, you were in an environment in that moment that somebody saw something special.
Yeah.
And then in between, there was the struggle where the world at that point was saying, no. And that theme will come up over and over again in your life. But you were a fighter. Would you say that?
Yeah.
A fighter is the word you use?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so now help to teach me what that person did to help you feel seen.
From the question you asked before, the first time I felt that was, her name is Elizabeth Cantine, and she was the coach of the drill team. And I came in and I auditioned. I'd choreographed my own solo to George Michael's I Want Your Sex. Why?
Well, that's what everyone wanted. Yeah, right. That's perfect.
So I remember sitting in front
that
of
was the song of the time. I did. We were both dating ourselves here. It's perfect. Yeah, great.
So funny to think back on that. I auditioned in front of this panel of judges, and she was one of them. And halfway through, this was the first time I'm ever performing in front of people like this.
You didn't have coaching? You didn't have training?
I just
you said, I'm going to go do this.
Yeah, I choreographed this whole solo to the song. And halfway through, I forgot the choreography. And I remember running out of the room, like crying. And I remember her coming over to me and pulling me back in and encouraging me and saying, like, start again. There's no pressure. And I did it. And it was the first time that I felt like, wow, like it's okay to make a mistake, and that there's a room to grow. And if someone's there that believes in you and nurtures you, like there's so much possibility.
What a hero.
And it was amazing. And I remember that so vividly. And then I remember getting the call that I had made captain, and that was just like, and everyone was like, what? I think even the girls that ended up on the drill team with me were like, we don't understand. Like, you're not in any dance classes. We're all in these classes and you're not. And I was like 4'0" And so I was like the smallest one as well. And I'm like screaming up at all of them. It was a wild transition in my life.
Who would imagine that Misty Copeland would have, on the first audition, first dance moment, would have blanked out and run off stage?
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, the choice was to leave, not to stand and do some, I don't know, there's 1,000 different options that people could have had in that moment, but you left. And do you remember that moment? What was happening for you?
Yeah.
In your mind?
Yeah.
And can you go back to that for just a moment?
Yeah. I mean, I think there was a sense of, like, everyone's right. Like, maybe you're not.
I thought you were going to go there.
All these things.
Right? Because you had the message that I should have listened to that. Okay, let me not lay any talk track over it. What was the message that you were hearing?
I mean, I think that it was, you're not good enough, or you shouldn't be auditioning for this. You're not ready. You don't have the training, or, all of those things. And
that would come up again in your life at some point, or did it extinguish itself there?
It would come up much later, after I'd already become a professional.
Interesting so you had this incredible freedom arc for a long time. And then once you hit the professional ranks, that thing came up. Let's pause that. We'll come back to that. Okay. So here you are, drill team captain. And then you probably started taking classes at some point.
Well, I would say, I don't know, a month or so into the drill team, Elizabeth Cantine, the coach, she was like, you really have an extraordinary talent. She was kind of teaching a little bit of ballet in our practices. I remember learning like a piqué turn and, these like kind of basic moves, but not so basic. I mean, I'd never even been at a ballet bar and learned, what you begin with. But she saw that I could do these things. I could see her and really just emulate what she was doing. And so she said, I think you should take these ballet classes. And I was not interested. I was like, what? I'm dancing to George Michael and Mariah Carey, and I'm finally on stage. Why would I do this thing called ballet? So she really pushed me into doing it. I was already a member of the Boys and Girls Club. So there was a local ballet teacher that was offering free ballet classes there and looking for more diverse students to bring into her school. And I literally was forced into taking this class on the basketball court. And that's where it all began, with Cynthia Bradley there on the court.
Okay. And so in that moment, was it like, oh, this feels good? Or was it like, wait, this is hard. This is something different? Not
hard. It was, I think I was intimidated. I wasn't in an atmosphere that didn't feel natural. I mean, I was in my gym clothes and socks on a basketball court with all these other like misfits. We were all like trying to do ballet and, and classical music I'd never heard before. And it wasn't until my teacher brought me into her school on full scholarship. And it wasn't until I was in an actual ballet studio with the mirrors and the bars, I was given ballet slippers and tights and a leotard. From that first class, I knew immediately, like, it all clicked. And I felt at home. I felt safe. I was confident, and it never felt hard to me. And I don't mean that like it was easy. I was just so eager to learn. I was so interested in it, and I was so eager that I just soaked up as much as I could on the daily and couldn't wait to return the next day.
What did your family think at that point?
I think they just thought it was, another extracurricular activity. It was like drill team. There wasn't much interest, and not that there wasn't support, but I don't think they took it seriously or understood where it could take me.
Did you have a sense at that point?
No.
Yeah.
I don't think I really understood, but I knew that there was no way I could go another day without doing it.
That is a radical insight. I didn't have a vision of where this could go, but I knew I needed to do more of it today because I felt at home, I felt safe, and I liked how I connected to myself. Okay. Fast forward to age 17. Oh, wait, before we go there, how did you afford ballet? It's typically a very expensive sport. And you referenced earlier that I didn't know where food was coming from. But did things change at some point? Or
No. So we were in the lowest point of our lives, I would say, like my family at 13 when I started ballet. We were living in a motel, me and my 5 siblings in one room, and it was really, really difficult. All of my training has been on scholarship.
Wait, you were in a hotel?
A motel.
A motel?
Yes.
5 siblings in one, like
And
what I
my
would
mother.
imagine. One room,
Yes.
one bed,
Yes.
5 siblings.
Yes.
And where were the parents?
It was just my mom. So she would sleep in the bed and we all slept on the floor. And this was on and off for years that we were kind of just bouncing around from motel to motel. And when I started dancing, my teacher, I was also so introverted because I didn't want anyone to know about my home life always.
So is it introverted or private? So introverted
Both.
is like, I gather energy from observing, from thinking, from listening.
Yes.
And that's how like I get energized. An extrovert, I gather energy from talking and being around people. And like there's a different type of energy generation.
Yeah.
So it is introversion.
Absolutely introvert.
And this was a
private.
a fear-based privacy.
Yes.
Right? Like I don't want people to see this part of me.
Right.
But I did like how people were able to connect and see this other part of me, this expressive part of me. Okay. That's like of course you've heard the phrase 2 selves. And did you work through that at a young age? Like I have this part of me that I don't want anyone to see, but I have this other part that I'm okay.
Yes.
How did that shape you looking back now? How did you use that?
So many things I've experienced, especially in my young life. It sounds crazy, but I feel like are attributes that you need to be a ballerina. This way of being able to become a character, pull from experiences in your life and kind of just turn it on or turn it off in an instance. And I've been doing that my whole life, in these different environments that I've been in to protect myself, to feel safe. And once I entered the ballet world, I had already seen so much and experienced trauma. And so when I entered the ballet world, I was like, oh, this is a piece of cake. I can handle this. Whereas, most people are like, this is a lot to take on. And it was exciting.
It really does speak volumes to how much trauma there was in your life, where ballet, which is considered one of the hardest disciplined training environments in youth sports, was safe, was a place that you would relish. Post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic growth. We don't talk about post-traumatic growth enough, but the idea there's just because you go through trauma does not mean that you have a stress disorder. At some point, did you go through a stress disorder, or did you constantly navigate to where you were using it in a way to help you be big and and find joy and happiness? Or did you find yourself in the stress response, which is a hypervigilance, a chronic fear that I could be traumatized again? So let me make sure that I'm on high alert and I avoid places that are potentially exposing or vulnerable. Imagine a car, if somebody had post-traumatic in a car crash, like, I'm not going around those types of corners anymore. I'm not getting in that red car again, or whatever it might be. So can you talk about that difference? Because it doesn't show up in your life now as trauma, but it certainly was at one time.
I think when it comes to my career or, my training, I was navigating and it seemed to help me in a way. When it came to my personal life outside, there was that traumatic stress for sure.
Oh, so there's
definitely a separation, even to this day, I think. Approaching, changes in my life at this point at 41 years old, there are things I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't realize I still, was protecting myself in a way. But when it comes to being on stage and being in the ballet world, I never felt that stress at all.
This is actually quite new to the theory, is that you had a place that you could relish ballet. And in that, you were able to build a whole set of psychological and emotional and social skills. So that place, as a safe haven, this is not new to the theory, but you were able to do it in such an extraordinary way because that place happened to match your genius, which is your physical intelligence. Okay. I mean, that is a recipe, I think, for any young child that is really up against it, is if you've got a safe haven and a place that you can be at home.
Right.
Okay, so it's not only the form, but it was the adults in the room that helped create that space for you.
Right.
Okay. All right. So now around 17, you haven't graduated high school and you are thrust into an opportunity to come to New York. So help me understand, were you aware of the biases in the world of ballet at that time? Or was there listen, I love how I'm going to go into a world where there isn't representation like me?
I was not aware. As you said, I was able to thrive because I had adults around me in that environment as a 13-year-old in the ballet studio. My ballet teacher, Cynthia, she was really, aware and conscious of protecting me from the realities of the ballet world.
I wonder if she would see you and say, "God, she is so good. There's nobody like her." Or would she say, "She is so good. She has so much potential. She's going to change the world."
Yes, that.
It was that. So she
From
was
the beginning,
a fighter
I
too.
thought she was crazy.
You did?
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember when the first time I took a class with her on the basketball court, she told me I was a prodigy, which I didn't really comprehend what that meant. She invited me to live with her and her family when she found out I was living in a motel and it was too much for me to travel back and forth. I remember within the first couple of months of living with her, she would say to me, you're going to change ballet. You're going to eat with kings and queens. And I'm just like, wow, this lady's off her rocker, but she's amazing and she loves me and she's, giving me so much. But she always saw that for me, but she protected me from a lot of things that I would learn as an adult that were happening in that studio that she was like, you started so late. You have so much training to catch up on. You can't have these outside distractions. And
what were those things that
there's a lot of racial things that were going on. I remember her telling me again as an adult that there were a lot of students, who had parents that were giving a lot of money. They sat on the board. And when I came in and was given the lead, in these ballets after 8 months of dancing, and they were saying really terrible things, the fact that I was a Black girl and why am I getting these opportunities? And they were leaving, taking their money, leaving the school. And I didn't know about any of these things that were going on.
What a gift.
It was amazing.
What a protector.
Really, I could completely be present and focused on the training, and again, not have these outside distractions.
As a mom, what were some of the statements that were said to you that you're going to play back to your kids?
I think it's important, for my son to really understand who he is in this world, as a Black boy, And I think that there was this balance, because it wasn't like I was completely unaware that I was a Black girl in this world and, and naive. My mother raised me with this very strong and clear understanding that even though you're biracial, you are a Black woman in society, and that's how you're going to be treated. So I came in already with, I think, this sense of self and identity as a Black girl.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
But then was protected. So I think that, it's important for me to instill that into my son, so that there is an education and understanding of who he is.
This is important, because you didn't look around and say, oh, I'm just like everyone here. You said, no, there's something different about me. But I love how I feel, and I'm going to keep coming back. Mm-hmm. Strong sense of self. Yeah. So you're going to help create that.
Yes.
And do you have 1 or 2 or 3 ways that you could maybe share with me how I can help others do that as well?
I think it's, for me and my husband, it's really empowering him to appreciate who he is, whether it's saying, your beautiful brown skin, or surrounding him with a diverse group of children who come from different backgrounds, or people that he can connect with and relate to, that he can see himself through. That, to me, I feel will be empowering for him.
Yeah. So you'll see him.
Yeah.
And then it sounds like what you'll do is create a community. You're playing the exact beautiful notes that you had earlier without the trauma. Mm-hmm. One of the world's best in basketball, I saw him maybe 5 years after he had retired. And I said, hey, how are you? He said, I'm great. And I said, how are the kids? He said, they're good. They're really good. And is Junior still playing ball? Yeah, he's playing basketball. I said, how's it going? As a dad, and and he says, he's got the best shoes, he's got the best coaches. He goes to the best camps. He's got me as his dad, but I can't give him the one thing that I had, which was nothing. And so your child will have much.
Yeah.
And your child will not have the same upbringing that you had.
Right.
And how will you help your son at this phase be resilient and be a fighter and find his raptus, where he can go into a place and express his genius from that place? Like, how will you create and help create that fighter? Because you are that, and it showed up on stage for a long time, and it actually showed up you probably didn't fight on stage. You probably had to do all the fighting
before, leading up
all
to
the struggle,
yeah.
right? And then there was freedom on stage,
right?
Maybe. So we'll get to that. But how do you think you'll help your son be resilient, be a fighter, have that competitiveness?
It's my husband and I have had this conversation. We've been together for 20 years, and we've had this conversation a lot. And I always thought I was going to be a strict parent, that was, going to instill those things in him so that he would have that resilience and not give him everything or give him the answers. And not that I'm doing that now, but I'm definitely not what I thought I was going to be. My husband is more of that, but it's something that we're constantly talking about and navigating our way through, is that I don't want to give him all the answers. He has to figure these things out, for himself. I want to listen to him. I didn't introduce him to ballet in the beginning. Like, there's nothing in my house that's ballet. There's one small picture in a corner in my closet, like dressing room area, of a ballerina bowing. And he's been drawn to it since I can remember, since he was a couple of months old. And so it finally got to a point where he was like begging me to show him what this thing was. So I finally was like, okay, I guess I'm going to show him a video of Swan Lake. And he watches full-length ballets now. He danced, like he's drawn to it. So I want to be able to nurture things that he's naturally drawn to. Of course, support and guide him in different ways, but not force him into anything, but listen to him and see him, and not just kind of give him things.
You had years of being seen and years of being unseen. Mm-hmm. And so you know the difference. Mm-hmm. And I would imagine you're pretty good at seeing other people.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So this won't be too hard for you, for your son.
No.
What gets in the way of you being your best? And let's start as a mom, and then let's move to, your best on stage.
We've talked about this a lot. I mean, read your book and there it is. I think it's kind of this distraction of other people's opinions, other people's views and words that might seep in. And for me, I think it's initially, I think it was from like critics, bloggers or, social media, things like that at a point in my career. And right now, it's being in a space that's not my safe space, which is the stage or the studio at this point in my life. It's being in boardrooms. It's being in spaces where I'm, speaking to lots of people. So it looks very different. And so it's almost like I have to retrain myself in a way.
Okay, so let's do that. So how long were you considered one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world? Like, how long was that run?
I have no idea. I really don't. I mean, so I was promoted to principal dancer in 2015 at the age of 32, which is considered very late. And so I think I was a principal dancer for 5 years before the pandemic hit, which is very short. But my career, as a whole, has been almost 25 years with American Ballet Theatre. So I'm not really sure how to gauge when people's opinions, of these things happened.
How did you navigate the critics? And specifically, what was being said? What was the main critique that you were experiencing?
I would say early on in my career, I would read reviews and at that point, I feel like I was taking as much, I was absorbing as much as I could. Like I was craving that feedback because I wanted to be better. And so I remember early on in my career, I would get a lot of criticism about my port-de-bras, which means the carriage of the arms. So the way I was holding my hands or, using the flow of my arms in connection with the rest of my body. And I remember thinking, okay, well, what am I going to do to improve this? Rather than, oh, they don't know what they're talking about or that, I'm offended. I was trying to, if I read something enough times, then I was like, that must be something that people are seeing, and I want to improve. But I would say that later in my career, there was a point where the pressures were so big. These articles that were being written, this was right before my promotion in 2015. Is Misty deserving of being promoted to principal dancer? Will she only be promoted because she's Black? Does she really have the body? Does she have the technique? If she doesn't perform these technical feats, should she really be a principal dancer? I mean, these are all things that are so unnatural for, someone who's in the position to be promoted. They're under the radar. They're doing their performances and the New York Times are not coming, to review them. So I was in a very different position because of, I had kind of been in the spotlight from the time I was 13 years old and coming into the company and being the only Black woman for the first decade of my career. I was just in a very different position. So once I was hearing all of that type of criticism, it just became so overwhelming. And it was the first time in my career that I physically shut down and couldn't perform and execute the things that I needed to on stage because I was just so overwhelmed with this pressure of feeling like if I fail, will there be another opportunity for another Black woman to come after me?
How did you manage the weight of that?
A lot of it was talking to my mentors that are really close to me and
back to your people.
My people. Mm-hmm. And that really just talked me off the ledge and got me to kind of go back to the basics. Like, where do you feel most safe and where are you at home? It's on the stage. Like you don't have any control over how other people feel. All you can do is be honest and true to yourself and do your best, which is what I've always done on stage. And so, there was maybe a month or, something like that. I mean, which is small in the grand scheme of my whole career, but it was at such a critical time, right before I would be promoted to principal dancer.
Did it get into the same way that when you ran off stage as a young girl, like maybe they're right? Is that what got in, or was there something else that was getting in?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of small, like very small of it getting in.
So did it have to do with your body? Did it have to do with your color? Did it have to do with your talent? Like, what was the thing that was underneath that was so agitating that it was at some level paralyzing to the thing that you love doing the most?
Yeah.
Or was it all of those or something else?
I didn't believe them when they were saying those things about my body or my talent. I think that when it came to these technical feats, to me, it's always been like the technique of ballet gives you a language to be able to tell a story. And that's what I had to keep going back to, that this is not a competitive sport where we're being, graded or scored based on these, we're using the technique to tell a story. And so I think there was a moment where I started to believe that I had to perform these technical things as if they weren't a part of telling the story. And, I was specifically talking about the 32 fouettes in Swan Lake, which it became something that was so much bigger than it should have been and so much bigger than me.
Okay, this is radical what you're describing. And what you're describing is that you needed to tell a story. And go back to early trauma, I didn't have a way to communicate. This is my way to communicate. And when it got heavy and hard, you came back to, I need to use my intelligence, my language, my form to tell a story. And it showed up in a fouette, 32 of them to be exact, right? Open up what that is for folks that might not know what that is and why that technically is so challenging. And the radical part is you said, no, it's not the technique. It's the opportunity to say something.
Yeah.
Okay, so talk about the technique that was, because it's so easy to get caught in the technique.
Yes.
But you are an artist and you went back to the art form. Okay, so help me understand the technical part just for a moment.
So the 32 fouettes have become this tradition, I guess you could say, within the classics. So Don Quixote, Swan Lake. They're in the repertoire of a lot of our ballets. It's a repetitive movement. So you're whipping your leg from front to side and you're rotating. And you're supposed to stay in one spot and do this 32 times. Now, what makes it even crazier is that this is not just in isolation. This may be in the third act of a 4-act ballet after you've already danced for hours, and it's considered like the grand finale. It's usually in the coda of a...
This is what everyone's waiting for.
This is what everyone's waiting for.
Let's see these fouettes.
Right.
And you're already fatigued.
Yes.
To your point.
Yes, you're already fatigued.
And you've got 2.5, 3 acts that thing's coming, which
right.
could be a disaster for any performer, right? Like that thing is coming later.
Yes.
So, okay, so there's a tension about what's called the dragon. Right? You're going to go slay this dragon. That's my metaphor, not yours. You are a dragon slayer, by the way. You are a fire breather, dragger, so like you have done it. Okay, so then when you would get to that moment, what would be when you were at your best, the type of thinking or the way it would feel? And what was it like when you were really struggling? And then how did you navigate that second one?
At my best, this is the moment where, let's say within the story of Swan Lake, this is my final attempt to get Prince Siegfried to believe that I am the white swan when I'm actually the black swan. So I have to whip him into a frenzy and just blow his mind so that he chooses me, and he no longer has lived up to this vow of love for the white swan. That's the purpose of the fouette. So at my best, that's what I'm thinking of. In my mind, it's like this Disney film, and he's just kind of whipped into this frenzy.
And so at your best, you're not finding the point which, like, to be centered. You're not doing a technical thing inside of you. You're not thinking about your elbows. You're not thinking about your carriage. You're not thinking about your leg.
I never am on stage. That's why we train for 8 hours a day. That's why we're in the studio 5 to 6 days a week. That's why we start at the age of 7, so that it's ingrained, it's second nature, the technique. That's why it's there, to support us telling a story, so that we are not out there trying to think of all of these things, because then you lose the artistry.
I'm so glad you said that, because focusing on technique would be the worst of the best things you could focus on. The worst is like, I'm not going to do it. I can't do it. All this negative doubt, critique, self-talk. But of the best, the least effective would be to think about a technical thing. The highest is that there is no thought. There's an expression, right? And somewhere in between is like, okay, I can do this. I got this. Like, that's better than I'm a mess.
Right.
It's better than thinking about my elbow or whatever the technical cue is. And then at the highest level, it's like, no, I am completely connected to what I am wanting to express. Okay. And at your worst.
At my worst. I mean, it's, you pretty much said it all. I would go out there, I would approach center stage, and it was literally like I could see that critic from the moment I was going to start my fouettes. And I'm going into it just thinking all of the things they're going to write about me. I'm thinking of, that this is this opportunity that I'm blowing to be promoted to principal dancer. I'm going to move off of this center point that I have to say. Like, all of these things are going on. It was just a terrible, terrible place to be in while you're performing. And I'd never experienced that ever, to be removed from myself while I'm performing.
And how did you fight through that?
Well, we did some work together that helped me get through that. And
that's not where I was going.
No, but
yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
But, I think that it was going back to the basics and going back to why I do what I do and going back to the storytelling. That's what helped me navigate going back on stage and being able to do it. Which I've done with every role. It's like I need to know every single aspect of the place that where it takes place, every character that's on the stage and how I relate to it. All of these things allow me to feel even more at ease and comfortable and at home. And so even though I had done that work, I had to go back and do it again to really understand why I'm doing this step to tell this story.
Beautiful. Because you're working from first principles in an artistic way. First principles, control, maybe even master what's in your control, which is the way that you think and feel and relate to the piece. You're taking control of your inner life, if you will. And then your outward expression is to match the artistry that you've conjured up from your creative space.
Yeah.
Expressed through the 20 years of disciplined training to be precise.
Right.
And to almost let that go.
Yes.
If there was a young person listening right now that is, let's say, in their 20s, what would you hope that 20-year-old person that's early career in whatever they're doing, what would you hope that they would know about how you've been the best in the world for an extended period of time and have worked through some really challenges in your life? What would you hope they know?
I think it's really difficult at that age, like teens, like going into your early 20s, to understand that you don't have to do this on your own. And having a support system and guidance in your life doesn't mean you're not capable or that you failed. That has been like the backbone of my success, is having a support system around me and people that I can rely on and turn to and get advice from, when I'm having tough times or when I'm not, that I'm constantly kind of in communication with. That's something that I think is so critical, when you're kind of entering into adulthood.
No one does it alone. Build your community, build your relationships.
Yeah.
Okay. And if there was somebody that was 13 that's listening to us and they're young, what would you hope they would know?
I think the power of individuality and being okay with who you are, especially this day and age with social media. I think it's so tough to feel like you can be your own person and not have to look like, the person next to you or, just things that come through your feed. There's so much power in being yourself.
I love that idea. fundamentally commit to know who you are and to work from that place.
Yeah.
That would drown out the critics at some way. When you know who you are, I think when you know who you are, nobody can take that away from you. They can critique and judge and point, laugh, scoff, dismiss. They can do all of those very violent things to another person, but when you know who you are, they can't take that away. For the 30-year-old that is paying attention and hanging on every word of your insight and brilliance, that is the only in a room, the only one that looks a certain way, the only one that doesn't have representation, the one that is like, I feel different than other people. And they can actually look like everybody else, but they have a private part to themselves that they don't want to be exposed or revealed. The person who has something that they either look or sound or show up different, or they feel like they don't want to be exposed. You have credibility in both. What would you hope that person understands?
I think that it's never too late to find your confidence. It's never too late to find your, inner power. I feel like I've lived my whole career, with this idea that I'm not going to have the same trajectory as anyone else around me. I started late. I was the only, I was promoted at 32, which is ancient in ballet years, all of these things, but, that you have to listen to yourself and follow your own path and your own journey. And of course, that community is always coming back into play with, at every point in my life. It's always about the circle of people around me that are going to be there to support me. I remember, being the only in ABT, in the beginning of my career.
American Ballet Theatre.
Yes, American Ballet Theatre. And having, a mentor of mine, Susan Failshill, that would say, maybe there hasn't been another Black woman to reach this height at American Ballet Theatre, but I can introduce you to other Black women who have been the first in different fields.
Wait, hold on. Tell me about that. Wait, how old were you?
I was in my 20s.
Somebody
20s.
tugged on your shirt and said, I want to recognize that you're at the pinnacle and you're doing it in a way that there's no path for people that look like you.
Right.
So you navigated this on your own. I want to introduce you to a tribe of people that have also navigated a different but similar path.
Yes.
Oh my, so
there's so much possibility
that's rad
in that, that I don't think that you have to find someone that has exactly experienced what you have, but there are so many people out there that have been the first or been the only that you can learn from, even if it's not exactly mirroring your experience. But I would also say that you have to be open to receiving that guidance and that mentorship. And I feel like I was from an early age. I was so hungry for someone to give to me, and I was ready to receive it.
You're so courageous in so many ways. What are you afraid of? I just saw that look.
Yeah. It's a constant battle at this point in my life and in my career.
Nobody would know that. Even listening to how you shape your words, how eloquent you are, how clear you are. I don't think anyone would recognize that you're now in a new transition and you're saying it's a battle.
It is. I mean, to be in, I think my fear is that I don't know everything, which, come on, it's not realistic, but it's a real fear.
Is it?
That I have.
That you're supposed to know?
That I'm supposed to come into certain situations and know and be able to answer, answer questions about things instead of just saying, that we're gonna figure this out together.
So going from ballet to
starting the Misty Copeland Foundation, to starting my production company, Life in Motion Productions, to starting my athletic wear brand, Greatness Wins, to sitting on different artists, boards of Lincoln Center and the Shed. And so these are all spaces that are so new to me, and, that it's just unfamiliar.
What psychological skills are navigating over to this? Like, are you pulling from your 20 plus year career as being the best in the world? Like, what psychological skills are you pulling through?
There is no giving up. Like, I am going to make this happen. I'm going to find a way. I think that's what it is. And it doesn't have to look like maybe what I imagined things would look like if I'd have to go to school and do all of these things in order to be in this place. But I'm on a different journey than other people, and that's okay. And it's gotten me to this place. And that's really, I think, the power behind my mission that's connected to all of these endeavors that I'm a part of, is that the arts have given me the tools to be able to do a variety of things. It's given me the confidence. It's given me the discipline, the belief in myself, the understanding and importance of community. So I have so many amazing skills, that I'm applying to all of these things. But there are still those days when I think, can I do this?
So do we all. Yeah. I mean, I'm making it up as I go. I don't have a path that, that is incredibly clear. I feel like I'm cutting the forestry in front of me, and that I look to what you're doing and I say, oh my God, the discipline, the confidence, the know what it means and feels to be in the arena, the awareness that I have this tension that I'm supposed to show up perfectly or know it all, but I don't. And to listen to how you said, I started as this very private, scared introvert to being one of the most expressive humans on the planet, to now building businesses and foundations to be able to help people become their very best. What a life arc. Did you ever imagine when you were younger that this is what life would look like?
I don't want to say no, because I feel like I couldn't see it, but I knew that it was something that would go beyond the stage. I've always seen ballet and the stage as this platform for me to grow. I've always looked at it that way since I was a little girl. And it's become that. And to this day, people always say, well, what's next for you? And I'm like, I have no idea. I know that it's going to be serving the same purpose as everything that I'm doing, but things have just kind of happened really organically. And I've kept my mind open. And if it makes sense and it's staying true to who I am, and, bringing ballet to more people and diversifying it, kind of changing the narrative around who can be a part of it and the stories that we tell, if it fits into that, then it's going to be authentic, and I think it will be successful.
You've had a great experience of having amazing coaches early on. And we think about those above the line coaches. Somehow they allow us to be seen, and when we leave their presence, we feel like we are capable of so much. They're above the line. Then there's the below the line coaches. When we leave their presence, we're not sure. We feel small. We're unsettled in so many ways. So have you had below the line coaches?
It's really hard, because I've had great coaches, and then I've had people that are brilliant artists that come into the room and don't know how to give that back to the dancer in front of them. And I feel like I've used these skills that I've learned throughout my childhood, where, abuse was coming at me, and I've learned how to kind of shield, block it from really entering into me in a real way. And so I think it's kind of, it's a skill, but I think it's kind of, listening but not really taking it in. And I think about one of my ballet mistresses, Susan Jaffe, who was a brilliant ballerina with American Ballet Theatre. And when I would have very candid conversations with her about these types of things. And she would just always say to me, don't let other people's words define you. You have the power to sift through the things that they're saying and take the jewels that you might hear or throw away some of the other words that they're saying. You have the power to do that. And it takes practice, but it's definitely something that I can do at this point. If I were in a studio, that I could just, maybe if they're saying things that I don't agree with or that are negative, I'm looking at them. They might be moving their arms in a really beautiful way. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can draw from that, or the way they're showing me the movement. Trying
Even
to
though
find
the words that are coming out are biting and cold and dismissive or whatever it is, or critical, you are looking for the thing or the information that can help you.
Yes.
Help us be really concrete. What is something that somebody in your past has said to you that has still stung?
I remember being in a setting when I was in the court of ballet, and I was given an opportunity to learn a soloist role, and there were other people in the room in the same position, and I had finished this variation, and the ballet mistress at the front said, well, you're much more talented than all of the girls in this room, but only if you had her body. And I just remember feeling hurt, but also thinking like, well, she doesn't like my body. All I can do is, be my healthiest self, which I don't think I was at that point, because I was still learning how to navigate what it is to be an athlete and fuel my body in that way, because that's not how I was raised. And so I thought, I can control this. I can be my healthiest self, but I know I have the talent, and I know that I have what it takes to do this.
Right. So it goes through a filter. And how do you build that filter? That I'm good, I'm okay. You're not going to define me. How do you build that filter so the things that come through continue to be something you can use?
It's the support around me. It's having the people that I do trust and that I know love me, that are going to be real and honest with me and support me, that I believe their words and their guidance.
We talk about building a table, a round table, if you will, and there's not many seats at that round table. And who do you invite to have a seat that really understands you, that understands your scar tissues, your pain points, your dreams, your ambitions, your hopes? So when they say something, it's in context of the fullness of you and not just some arrogant. Yeah, I love all of that. Let's do a couple really quick hits. Okay. So short, pithy little answers, if you will.
That's hard for me, but I'll try.
One word, 3 words,
okay.
Maybe a sentence. Okay. I am strong. My vision is
creativity and artistry for all.
If there was a word that you understand the most, what is that word?
Fight.
And if there's a word that you revolt against, that is difficult, like you're like, I don't understand that word.
Judgment.
The way you said it. What did you just feel?
That fear of people, of being judged, like my whole life, or in my childhood and in my professional life, and just not wanting to put that on other people.
Yeah, the world needs that.
Yeah.
Thank you for being that. Yeah, and bringing it forward even in this conversation. Okay. Pressure comes from?
I feel like I could take this in so many different directions. The way I'm thinking at it in this very moment is that pressure comes from negativity.
Okay. If you had a boat, what would you name it?
Butterfly.
Perfect. Who tells you no?
Jackson, my son.
Okay. Who says you?
My husband.
What a gift. When you think about the now generation of kids, what is the one word that you hope for them?
One word, I don't know, but belief in themselves.
If there was somebody who was a master of craft and you had the opportunity to sit with them, whether they're alive or not, who would that master of craft be?
Mikhail Baryshnikov.
And where would you sit with Mikhail?
Maybe in the Russian tea room and have vodka or something.
That was a surprise. And if there was one question you could ask him, just one, what would the question be?
Crazy, because I've met him so many times and never had like this, a conversation like this. I I would ask him, like really dive in with him, like his approach in becoming a character on stage, because I think that's his brilliance. It's not these technical things that I think people know him for. It's his storytelling.
I love that answer. How did you do it? And this is the last question for us. How did you become or create the story that you were able to express?
It's truly believing that I am that character, that person. It's diving in so deep that I can feel the air of the place that I'm in and the scent of where I'm at, music that's playing in that place. I think it's going back to being a young girl, and I think something I didn't really get to experience, which was this like imagination and creativity that I bring with me on stage.
I understand why you're a legend. I understand why you have broken barriers, how you have slayed dragons, how you have become somebody that so many of us look to say, that is what freedom looks like, that is what courage looks like, that is what artistry and creativity is embodied in. And thank you for breaking down barriers and showing us how to be strong, graceful, and to keep fighting.
Thank you so much.